Chris and Carol. We're so glad to have you presenting this morning to our members and non-members and the business community across Newfoundland and Labrador. And the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. Thank you very much for having us. And, you know, we're all at home. I'm having my morning coffee and just relax for a few moments and take it in. Many of you have children in the background and are struggling to have different priorities with being home. I know I've heard from some parents that they're doing long division with their children. Dogs could come in and out. So that's certainly the case in my background, you know, so we're easy here. Chris and I are going to present a presentation this morning. Feel free to jump in. We want it to be conversational style. This is a time when we want to hear from you and just have a conversation about business and business growth. Chris?
Thank you very much. It's so nice to see a number of familiar names in the room. I will say, so Rhonda had asked about communication throughout. It would be wonderful if this could be an interactive chat. The only thing from my perspective is I'm only able to see 4 or 5 windows across the top because my presentation is in full view. So Carol, I don't know if there's a way for you to monitor if people are texting questions or
Absolutely. Like so I'm monitoring the chat as we're going along. Okay. So Chris is flipping the slides. I'm monitoring the chat. Just say that I have a question, or you can just say question, and then I'll open up the floor to you. Unmute your mic and then say your question.
Yeah, excellent. Yes, great to see John Eric in the room. Let's see here. All right, I see now. Let me just get myself acquainted. There is a chat thing here. There we go. Okay, I can leave this open, I think. So this might help.
Edie Newton. Good, great to see you.
John Eric, you'll be proud of my promotion to John Eric. Okay, let's see here. Let me see. I got to turn this.
Oh, so many great people. Oh, I'm so glad you joined. I want to hear from every single one of you. Look, Leah's in the room too. Michelle Sampson.
All right, let's dive in. And
we're going to have a great time this morning. Let's do this.
All right, so first I thought it would be appropriate to be real and talk a little bit about the micro view. And I distinguish micro view from macro view. Okay, so the reality of it is I think we'll all agree that as we pay attention to the media and so on, we can see that things are, you know, they're getting worse before they'll actually get better, right? So that's a reality of this. And we're also here in Newfoundland, in terms of the micro view, we're coming off the heels of a state of emergency, aka Snowmageddon, where businesses were shut down for a week already so far this year, which had massive impacts. I don't think any of us can deny the actual impact of such events that are happening. I mean, I'm hearing every day employees being laid off, 1 million plus people in Canada applying for EI, and so on. So definitely at a micro view, this is absolutely devastating. You know, and I think another reality is that business, you know, it's not going to be conducted face to face for the next little while, you know, 1, 2, 5, 6 months, whatever, something in that vicinity, perhaps. You know, so at a micro view level, there's no doubt this is devastating to businesses in terms of the overall whole. And I think it's also at a very micro level, even more impactful here in Newfoundland, given the state of affairs.
I'm just going to jump in there.
Go ahead, Carol.
Can we all mute our mics? So I think that's, yeah, just be sure you're muted. Perfect. So just in this moment, I know everyone is a little bit fearful at home and concerned about their businesses and what's going to come, and certainly we want to recognize that in this time. So we know that businesses have been shut down and there's been a lot of layoffs, as Chris has mentioned. So on the heels of this, we just want to say we hear that, and we want to share with you a little bit of a glimpse of what's coming as well.
Yeah, and that's really referring to the macro view, the long view, I guess you could say. You know, there's a lot of articles that I've read around ensuring that we, as business owners, business leaders, try to work through this, taking the long view in mind, and I would refer to that as the macro view. And you know, let's just be, again, real. You know, there's no doubt the long tail of such an event that we're going through, you know, let's call it a 1 year long tail. You know, we had Snowmageddon in early January. The long tail of such an event could be upwards of a year from now. And so whereby we'll feel the ramifications of this in one form or another. However, in terms of the long view, 1 year is really only 1.2% of an average lifespan. You know, so I think you'll agree that in terms of the long view, 1.2% is actually a small amount, a small percentage. And I think if we also do some research and do some study, we'll find that some of the greatest success stories in history are rooted in constraints such as recessions and depressions and so on. And I just listed a couple of examples: Microsoft, Apple, GE, GM, all companies that were founded and or reinvented themselves during recessions and major impactful events in terms of the history. And all of these examples are, you know, in this century, or the 1900s. So I think there's some great indicators in these examples that if we spend some time researching and studying, there's a lot to be learned from these examples and many, many more.
A lot of innovation comes in wartime, particularly when we're really pushed to our limits. And I know I've been working with some folks even this week who are starting to retool their businesses and gear up for a response to how the market is changing. And we'll talk about that a little bit about that a little bit later. And I'm open to take it offline. But what we're going to see and what we now know is how we're going to come out of this. So we are in what they're referring to as week 2. In the next 4 weeks, we're going to peak, and then we're going to come down off of that curve with an additional 4 weeks on the other side. So we're going to peak around the 20th to the 30th of April. And then by June, we'll have flattened out of that curve. So then we'll be able to walk about the cabin a little bit better. And then in between September and December is going to be our second wave. And that peak is going to be much less, but it will rise again. So we're looking at, from a time perspective, we're looking at least until December before we can have either something that eradicates this, like it just dies out, or there's an antibody out there that we can take that's created. So that'll give you a sense of the time frame. And does anybody have any questions about that time frame? Just you can indicate in the chat or just unmute your mic and come on the line.
Yeah, and I think it's important to acknowledge that this is not an exact science. You know, obviously there's a lot of uncertainty and unknowns to all of this. However, I think if we take that macro long-term view and just get to work and try our best to make the most of such a thing, we'll come out of this in a better state.
Absolutely. So what we have right now, if we look at that as putting the dire behind us and then coming up with this macro view, what we have is, so I'll just recategorize, I guess, after we come out of this large peak and then on the downward curve, there's going to be a surge in spending. So that surge is coming from our built up, and Chris is going to come to it here, is going to come up from our built up spending. So if you can think about it right now, what we have, even in our everyday lives, we still have our capital expenditures, which you have in your business, which is rent and or mortgage, your hydro, and your food or what have you. But, and your truck payment. In your disposable spending or discretionary spending will all be pinned up. So we're still spending the same amount, typically, but we're looking at it differently. So when we're looking at spending for those disposable income items, we can't spend it. So we're not going to the restaurants right now. We're not drinking alcohol out because we can't buy any. And we're not going to the movies in the same way. So we're going to have a huge surge in what's coming from a spending perspective. Chris, do you have another point there that talks about?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. So
yeah.
The one thing that I've come to realize in my sort of thought process here is that the reality of it is travel will be the last part of our economy to rebound. And that comes down to confidence, getting outside the province and exploring other areas and so on, where it's the fear of the unknown. So travel will be the last part of the economy to actually rebound. And therefore, there's going to be a real trend whereby people are going to want to get out and live locally, right? So restaurants will be full, fitness facilities will be full, construction will get into high gear, and entrepreneurs will start rehiring, and the stimulus money is all going to start flowing. And some of that, we're already seeing a lot of indicators of that already. So Carol, does that, you want to jump in there and share anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So because of that travel restriction, there'll be more money within our own province to spend and from a business perspective to participate in. We'll also have there'll be more money available because of the low interest rate. So business owners such as yourselves will be taking advantage of that. So that's where the construction industry will start to take off again, because there will be a little bit more investment. The stimulus will start to come in, plus you'll have that pinned up disposable income that will now become available all in one shot. I'll just have you think about, for example, what is to come is if you think about a dentist office who have now had to close. Right? So they're closing. Dentist office typically run at really good capacity. I'll say 80% capacity on a regular basis. But if they're closed for several months, then they're going to have a huge surge of people trying to get in just to have their teeth looked at.
Yeah.
So then how are we going to absorb that as an economy and as business leaders?
Yeah.
Any questions on that? Chris, you go ahead and I'll see if there's any questions.
Okay. Yep. So, I think it all comes down to get in front of these opportunities. We want to actually try our best to embrace the constraints, right? So there's a reality to embracing constraints, and those are the hard decisions, right? Thus, we're seeing the layoffs that have been occurring. I've had our clients are cutting costs, eliminating IT subscriptions, and so on, right? So those are the hard decisions, but those changes that we make today will help us in future years. We will become do far more with less. So it's a great opportunity in terms of embracing the constraints to be better and to be in a better position in the future with doing more with less. So, okay, go ahead, Carol.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah. So, in terms of, so now I thought it would be important to really speak to us as individuals. Okay. So we are being held up in our houses. I'm looking out of my back window overlooking the city of Mount Pearl, and that view gets a little old over time. But the reality of it is that the only way we're going to get through this is if we focus on ourselves first. So take care of ourselves and our families first. And I suggest we focus on the 5 energy drivers. What are those energy drivers? We want to eat well. We want to get up and move as much as possible. I've been walking my 2 golden retrievers twice a day, getting down in my gym and working out. So we want to move. We want to get adequate sleep. I should have told my poker league buddies that last night. But anyway, here I am this morning. So I didn't get as much sleep as I wanted to last night. But we want to get adequate sleep. We want to be relaxing as much as we can. And we want to ultimately, the one thing that is common amongst every human being is this desire to connect. And thus, we're seeing great things like this happening, webinars, jumping on Zoom, reaching out to grandparents over Zoom, FaceTime, whatever. Zoom is now all of a sudden, the most used word. So we want to connect with people as much as possible.
So let's open up the line. I just want to check in with everyone. Do you feel worried? And you can just, if you want to type it in the chat, where are your sentiments of where things are going? Do you feel worried? Are you optimistic about the opportunities of the future? Or are we in this together? So if you just want to pick one of those 3 and write it in the chat so we can get an idea of where everyone is, or if you want to come on the line with a question, that's great too. So are you worried, or are you optimistic about the opportunities that are coming, or you're somewhere in the middle and we're just in this together? All right, Chris, go ahead.
Oh, there's someone chatting there.
Yeah,
obviously
we're in this together. Optimistic, great.
Yeah, fantastic. So in light of looking after,
Chris,
go ahead, Rhonda.
Got a question. Go ahead, Rhonda.
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to share more of a comment. What I've noticed over the last few days, depending on who I chat with and what that conversation is about, I noticed I was letting it affect me. So if that person was feeling more worried or stressed, and then I realized, okay, so I've got to be grounded, depending, because you're chatting with lots of people. So making sure that I'm not letting those around me or who I'm chatting with influence how I'm feeling, depending on how they're feeling. So I've noticed that this week, which I thought was really interesting, in making sure I'm grounded. And then after I'm chatting with people, that I get back to that calmness before I chat with someone.
Rhonda, I can really relate to what you're saying there. I observing my own energy early last week, and I think Carol would be attest to this because she was my sounding board. Early last week, working with our clients, I was taking it on my shoulders, so I was listening, doing my best to encourage, but ultimately I found myself in the evenings. I felt the weight on my shoulders of all of our clients. So I can definitely relate, and that's when I realized I needed to get my routines in place. One of the things that I've done is I treat every day as a work day. So I get up early, normal time. I do my normal routine in the morning, get my shower, put on even though I'm working from home, I'm wearing my work clothes, right? The clothes that I wear when I go out and meet clients.
I'm the same way. I found the treadmill. It's the thing that's in a room that I hang clothes over, and it really works. I had no idea before now. So
yeah. So Carol, any other
so people are optimistic. So Jackie chiming in, optimistic about the future, worried about the logistics of getting there. I absolutely appreciate that.
Excellent.
A little bit of it all. Our face-to-face is most impactful. And then with travel affected, we're looking at other ways of keeping our young adults with cancer connected. Very important role there, Don. Yeah, absolutely. Survival depends on adaptability. And I think that's very important. So great comment. The adaptability, and we've had several conversations this week about it. So there's 2 points here. One is I want to just talk about the roller coaster that we're on. So Chris mentioned, just his own feelings. And what I'll say is that Chris and I work with many different companies across the island and across Canada. So we have a very good beat on what people are saying. And from moment to moment, it changes. And it's not even, so in some cases, it's last week was different than this week, but that could be on a day-to-day basis, and it's definitely industry-based as well. So some industries are just being absolutely devastated by this, where other industries will grow. So one of the things that we'll coach our clients on is the new normal is today. So this is the environment that you're in, and just adapt to today. And then if you can do that every day, when we get back to a more relaxed environment, we'll have adapted so much that we'll be used to it anyway. So we don't have to wait to get back to that normalness.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, in terms of looking after yourself first, I highly encourage. It's a similar theme to what we're talking about here. Talk to those closest to you about the impact. Do not keep it all inside. I think that's one of the worst things that we can do is put up this armor that everything is either perfect when it's really not. It's really important that we be real, be genuine, authentic with people who are closest to. Which opens up great dialogue. And I highly encourage everybody who to avail of the financial supports, whether that be the mortgage, putting the mortgage on hold for X number of months, loan payments and so on. Avail of those financial supports to help make it a little bit easier. So, and then from there, so you look after yourself first. The one thing that I have been trying my hardest to do is just simply be, and I think this presentation is perhaps an indicator of it, is I'm just trying to be a beacon of light for those around me. And I encourage you to do the same thing. We want to lead by example where possible. There's always a way to move forward. So let's try to act every single day. I'm going to share with you a routine that I follow, which gets me moving in the morning. So we want to act and keep moving, lead by example, and embrace the mindset that this is your time to lay the foundation for what is ultimately a quantum leap. That ability to make immense jumps in our personal and professional lives. So if we embrace that mindset, we actually will attract it to us, and we'll attract to us the opportunities, versus if we embrace a mindset of inner directedness, and penting up this energy inside, clearly that's not going to open up opportunities for us. And the reason I have a shark, the one thing I've learned about a shark is a shark suffocates if it's not moving forward. That's why you see sharks always moving forward, and because it suffocates. So therefore, let's try to find a way to move forward every single day, whether that's physically, mentally, in our businesses, our personal, spiritual lives, whatever, right? Any thoughts on that?
If anybody wants to share something about moving forward, I would love to hear it. One of the things that I've been incredibly blessed is to have mentors that have been incredible leaders. So Chris Hickman once said, and this has always stuck with me, he said, as long as my company is moving forward, and he said to do that, everyone in the company has to take a step forward today. And that's how he leads, is everyone must take a step forward today. So if I asked myself at the end of the day, have I taken a step forward? And if not, what can I do in these last few moments to do that? We'll all be better off and have stronger businesses.
Yeah, and I'm noticing Eddie is commenting on the feeling of uncertainty, hesitant to test the waters, really just getting my bearings at homeschooling and working from home. And you know what, Eddie, that's perfectly fine. I think the worst thing that we can do in this environment is compare ourselves to others. So look after yourself first, laying the foundations for the things that you have to focus on at home in terms of the homeschooling, And I think if you celebrate that every single evening before you go to bed, you'll get up every morning and, you'll be to Carol's point earlier, that's your new normal, right? And you get to move forward from that point. So it's all about embracing that growth mindset. I want to just distinguish this concept of quantum leaps versus conventional growth. Conventional growth is all about step-by-step improvements. It's all about gradual gains. It's all about incremental progress. And there's nobody out there that rules the world that says that's the only way to actually grow. The reality of it is we are all capable of what I refer to as quantum leaps, which is exponential increases, nonlinear results, breakthrough performance. If you'll permit me to get a little bit metaphysical here, the reality of it is quantum physics. We as human beings are made up of atoms, and atoms have this ability to we're a molecular structure. Atoms have the ability to make quantum leaps. It's like lasers. It's like cell phones. These technologies are built on the premise of quantum physics. So if we are made up of the same matter and the matter can create these exponential increases and nonlinear breakthrough performances, then truly we have that same ability innate within us. So it all comes down to that mindset and embracing the quantum leap mindset. I think, let's use this as an opportunity to do that. So I want to share with you a strategy called the quantum leap strategy. And in these times, it's very important. This is just a 4-step process, a 4-step strategy, basic strategy, in terms of, making the quantum leap. So the worst thing we could be doing right now is throwing all our goals out the window. We should be actually focusing more on our goals. We may want to adjust them slightly, reforecast them. However, let's stay focused on a goal. So we need to pick an aiming point. And by picking an aiming point, we have something to shoot for. We want to also have relentless pursuit. One of the themes I think you'll agree that's throughout this presentation so far is action. We want to be taking action. So every day doing something, there's always a way forward, doing something to move us towards that goal, that aiming point. We want to be practicing some mind work so that the self-doubt and the negativity doesn't creep into our pores and dictate how we actually run our lives. So let's find a way to do things to embrace the optimism in all this as best we can. So I'm going to share with you a ritual that I follow in a couple of seconds that hopefully will help you in terms of the self-doubt and it enforces consistency and growth. And then ultimately we want to track our progress. So there's no reason that we're in these times we should throw out tracking and keeping focused on those goals and the actions that we're taking and the progress that we're making. I've been on a personal journey myself around health. And one of the best things that I started doing was using MyFitnessPal as a place to track everything I was eating. I've been eating, and I was also track the number one indicator for me at this point in time, which is the number on the scale. So let's track our progress in any way we can. So this is it's a simplistic formula, but I think if you stay focused on this formula, you'll come out the other end of this in a good way. Any thoughts, Carol?
Chris and I use this formula when working with our clients. So picking that aiming point, for those of you that I've worked with, we'll jointly pick an aiming point, and then I usually double it. And I love that stretch on having the goal and that potential. And then, as Chris mentioned, there's no reason why we just can't 10x it. If we're relentless in that pursuit. So like just break down doors, let's believe it in our hearts and put the steps in place that we need in order to be able to get there. And that's the work. The mind work is, I want, we all have that self-doubt of things like, why me? Why should I do it? Nobody asked me. I can't do that. That's not for me. this is never going to work. So I want to replace those thoughts with a new thought of, you know, I make, and then you put in however much money that is per year annually. As soon as you have that thought, or whatever the goal is, I, you know, run a very successful company, and it, you know, and put a target around that. So every time you have that limiting disbelief thought that comes in, you're replacing it with another thing. So have you guys ever used mantras? You know, just come onto the chat and see if it's worked for you or not. I can tell you that this is no longer that voodoo stuff that we used to talk about and think about in the 80s. Or in the 90s, mantras are used by very, very senior leaders around the world, and they're open about it now. So it's not as metaphysical as it is. And then tracking. So the measurement of the goal and how well you're doing is essential. We celebrate everything. So it's those small wins that is really going to get you through. During this time, and certainly for me since Saturday, it has felt like every day has been a week. I don't know how you guys have been dealing with time, but you have to celebrate those small wins that you have per hour and per day, because if not, you'll go through the forest with only ever seeing the trees, and you'll never see when you can look back on the landscape to see that you've actually walked across a nation. So that tracking is incredibly important. As Chris said, he uses MyFitnessPal. I use a CRM because I want to track the money, and I also look at my bank account.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I mean, some basic tracking, it could be your, like you said, Carol, your bank account and your calendar, right? A great way to get an indication of where you will be in 3 to 5 months from now is to look at your calendar and your bank account. And you will see all kinds of evidence in those two tracking mechanisms of the effort you're putting in and where you're spending your money. So those are two great ones to add as well. So I want to share with you.
Great comment there from Chad. I'll just say, use positive thoughts all the time. Also tracking your negative thoughts. I think that's incredible. Absolutely track your negative thoughts. If you do that, you'll see how much they creep in, right? And that's absolutely correct. And then just replace it with a positive thought, and having that mantra ready is perfect, right? So thanks very much for those comments, guys.
Yeah, and to that point, Carol, you said earlier about leaders using some form of mindfulness, meditation practice. Great book, Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss. He's quoted as saying over 80% of super achievers have some form of daily mindfulness and meditation practice. And I do believe that it's more important now than ever. So let me share with you this ritual that I use, and I use a journal as a part of the process, you know, but it all starts with getting still, relaxing, taking a moment to look at a photo that represents your goal. I've actually even went as far, and I've got all kinds of binders behind me. I've went as far as drawing, you know, hen scratches, drawing. I'm not a drawer, but I draw a picture that represents my goal. But if you just want to take a picture of your goal, and I'll show you mine. What I do is I take the pictures, if you can see this, and I lightly trace the edges of my goal image with my finger. So if you're relaxed and you're still and you do this, what effectively you're doing by doing that is you are visualizing yourself. You're actually physically placing yourself in the actual goal, right? And imagine yourself going there, overcoming the obstacles and the constraints. If you do this and you just try, what I will say is it will work, but it might take a little bit of trying. You know, it's a great way to start your day, looking at that photo, tracing your finger with the photo. If you want to draw a picture of the photo, then that's even better. Read the goal out loud to yourself, right? So Carol mentioned earlier, like for me, I've got my goal, so it's a vision statement typed up. I read that to myself out loud. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but hey, she's reaping the benefits. So I read the goal out loud. And what I find then is when I do this, and I do it for, say, 10 minutes, what I find for me, and I'm sure it'll happen for you, insights, ideas, actions will come to you. And one of the things that I've learned about ideas is they're like slippery fish. If we don't write them down, they'll wiggle away and we'll lose them. And so we want to write those ideas and insights and actions down as they come to us, and just do it, right? And then what I do from there is I look over the list, which is usually 2 or 3 things. It's usually things like I should call, I should call whoever, I should get online and research this website. Those are the types of ideas and insights that come to me. I look over the list and I simply take action on the one that resonates the most to me. And if you do this, you'll see all kinds of themes showing up that'll help you move towards your goal. So this is the Quantum Leap ritual that I practice. Take it. I highly encourage you to adapt it into your life, and especially during this time.
So Chris has a video that he's going to show on this. As you're seeing it, do you want to just jump in on the comments and, share anything in your experience of how this might have worked in the past for you, or how you might implement it in the future?
Yeah. And and so this video, it's a 2-minute video, is all about why what I've told you is the ritual, why it actually does physically work. Let me just get it queued up here. All right, give me a second. Oh, here we go. Can you see it, Carol?
Yep. Perfect.
What is this?
Why this in fact works.
When you pick your aiming point, a switch turns on in your brain. What happens next is amazing. A highly specialized search engine cranks up inside your skull. It's called the Reticular Activating System, or RAS. The RAS focuses on your goal. Then it sorts through all incoming sensory signals, everything you see, hear, touch, taste, or smell. The RAS focuses on 3 narrow priorities: things you value, things that are unique or unusual, and things that could threaten you. The RAS filters out 99% of all sensory input you're exposed to. It's disregarded as unimportant. Think of it this way. A sharp aiming point produces an astounding increase in your brain's selective perception. Your RAS sensitizes you to all kinds of opportunities, resources, and potential threats that you would otherwise fail to notice. This powerful search engine sifts through your entire haystack of experiences, scanning relentlessly for the particulars that can help fulfill your goal. Your brain does all this search work on its own. The hunt goes on subconsciously, quietly, out of your awareness. Your RAS is one of the mighty unseen forces. It does its job invisibly in the dark recesses of your brain. The more you desire the goal, the hotter it burns in your heart, the harder the RAS works to find things that relate to goal achievement. But your RAS can't put its incredible power and creativity to work unless it knows what you want and how badly you want it. No aiming point, no help whatsoever from your RAS. Lukewarm desire? Well, that's also a problem. Your RAS will go idle or do half-hearted search work. If you want to make the quantum leap from you to U squared, the RAS must know what you're shooting for, and it needs to be a goal you're passionate about. Aim high and shoot for a goal that stirs your heart.
All right, hopefully that was valuable.
So one of the things that we typically do with our clients, and I mentioned this at the start, is we'll work with them to see what it is they truly want, and then we usually double that expectation. The reason for that is because it really focuses business owners, when there's so many things that you can do, on truly what it is that they are looking for. And it filters out all the noise. So you guys know, as you're approaching business, there's all kinds of things that you have to worry about. There's operational problems, there's HR problems, there's payroll, cash flow, logistics. There are all kinds of things that filter in when you're trying to build your goal of making money. And I'm not to say to ignore those things, but it is really about the drive of going forward and paying the attention to driving the business forward. And then these things have a tendency to take care, you'll find solutions readily for them so that you can focus on the drive.
So no presentation on growth would be complete without talking about sharing some ideas around clients and sales and so on, right? And we want to be very sensitive to this time because obviously our clients are going through, our existing clients and potential clients are going through the same things that we are, right? So we do want to be conscious or cognizant of that, right? One of the things that I recommend with respects to existing clients is we want to lean in. We want to reach out. We want to talk to our clients, find out how this is impacting them. Tell them what you are doing to support them. Get into open conversation and dialogue. Find ways to be relevant, more relevant than ever. And there's so many great examples. I'm going to share 2 examples at the end of the presentation of just 2 I found in the last 5 minutes before this presentation. I've got other examples. I mean, I have a client who has, who is, helping essential workplaces stay in business by, helping these clients implement the 6-foot rule, taking temperature checks and so on. So this is a great example, and maybe I'll name the client, DMC, Dallas Mercer Consulting, who's doing this and finding ways to be more relevant. I'm sure, Carol, you have other examples as well.
Absolutely. This week in particular, as we're in the COVID-19, there are many companies that are really stepping up to the plate to help deliver things that are going to be needed over the next 8 weeks that's coming to us. So, for example, how can, maybe I'll just share this one with you, how can Pepsi retool in order to get face shields supplied into the medical system? We've already seen that Bauer, the big skate company, retool. So it's not just helmets, but they're doing face masks and goggles. So they're really, again, adapting to today as the environment and really shooting for that 10x goal.
Yeah. So, and Carol, you talked about this earlier a little bit, but adapting to today. I mean, we'd like to challenge everybody on this session to treat every day as its own distinct unit. Just make the goal of adapting to today. And if we're always adapting to today, we'll always be ahead. And I encourage you, with respect to your existing clients, reach out to them, as I've already noted, try to strike win-win, deeper win-win relationships. And maybe this is the time to evaluate your pricing in exchange for longer-term partnerships. So, so the win on your client side is they get to save a little bit of money. The win on your side of it is you get to engage your client in a longer-term, deeper partnership. So it's just an example of ways to reach out, try to get deeper, and create longer-term, deeper relationships with your existing clients.
So just as a poll here, because if it hasn't happened, I won't speak to it, but have any of you had clients that have come in and said, we want to either pause the contract or let it go? Have any of you had that experience? We can give a couple of tools of how to address that if that is the case. So again, the question is, have you had any clients over the last 2 weeks that have said, oh, you know, I'm out because this time is uncertain. I don't know what's going to happen. So let's pause everything. If not, we'll just carry on.
Okay. So, oh, someone's.
Oh, somebody, yeah. Okay. So we'll just take it a couple of steps here. When you have a client that comes to you and says, hey, this is a very challenging environment for us, and we would like to pause, there's a couple of things that you can do with that. So one is absolutely have that conversation. So have that conversation, hear your client, see what they're feeling, and you can do two things in that. One is really highlight the value that they're looking for. So really suss that out, and then either take it away or see if you can reproduce that in some way and showcase it, because maybe they're just not seeing it. Again, getting back to that focus of what are they seeing? I mean, we're being inundated with media. So there's a lot of noise coming at them right now. So really highlighting that value and really listening to what it is that they need today. The second thing, in highlighting the value and having that conversation is really taking it to that next step and maybe negotiating that time frame of, okay, let's extend our contract, but for a lesser price. So that's on the pricing point. So you can then have more certainty in your pipeline at a lesser price point. So that would be the negotiation stage. So first would be resetting your value. Next would be the negotiation stage. And the next stage then is, are they a fair weather client? So have you built the relationship enough with them? Are they your ideal client? And do you really want to continue with this? Because now is the time for you also to say, maybe it's okay for us to part ways. And I know some of you are clinching, you know, Chris, sometimes people will be like, oh my God, I don't want to say no to a client. And, you know, we're definitely here to say it's okay. Not all clients are great clients. So is there comments on that? Because we're going to change your focus here right instantly on that. I want to keep my client base to getting business. So we're going to do that switch.
Yeah. I think now more than ever, it's important for us to zero in on who our ideal client is, because in my opinion, now is the time only to be selling to our ideal client. The reality of it is, if that person is not, or company is not your ideal client, it's actually noise, right? I'm flabbergasted at the number of unknown callers that I'm getting on my phone. I laugh, right? You know, it's like, I don't want to answer the phone right now and talk to people who are trying to sell me something that I have no desire to buy. You're just wasting my time. And I'm just thinking about it completely negatively. So only be selling to your ideal clients during these uncertain times would be what I would suggest. In terms of also, I do suggest we maintain some degree of consistency in our business, you know, discipline and follow-up each day. And again, keeping in mind, you're only talking to ideal clients, ideal prospects. I suggest we keep marketing, right? And maybe the framing of our marketing, and I know we have a great marketer on the line in DC, Donnie Cody, who probably could talk in circles around this, but you know, keep marketing, keep things moving. You may want to adjust your message. I know on the line there's a great company in Vigilant Management who are adjusting their message right now around helping the construction industry get through this. So we do want to be keeping our marketing going, just maybe adjusting the messaging slightly, right? Connect with people, leverage your network in terms of getting out there and not physically, but you know, virtually connecting with people. Our networks are our #1 asset. So one of the things I try to do is connect people in my network who I believe could be beneficial relationships, right? So I think we should be continuing to do that. And, you know, I believe now is the time to reach out for conversations. You know, people are sitting at home looking for intelligent conversations. Carol, I know you and I talked about this yesterday. You had a great example yesterday of having a conversation with somebody who it would have been a struggle during busy times to have that conversation, and you end up spending a half hour with them.
So what I'll share with you now is really the opportunity that we have in this very moment of COVID-19 that we will never have again, and that is that captive audience. So if you think about the landscape, people are at home. They're at home, they're doing long division, they're learning how to homeschool their children, and some of them are your ideal client. Some of them are the greatest, or the heavy hitters that are at home trying to figure out how to propel their business forward when they're completely shut down. I had the experience yesterday of talking to a dental surgeon who has many practices, works with all the dentists in the province, and he spent 30 minutes with me. I would never be able to have had that experience if we weren't in COVID-19. And there's many people that are at home that are just wishing that somebody would reach out to them to have an intelligent conversation, whether that just be saying, hey, what do you think where things are going? You know, maybe now is a time that you have time where we can really consider about how I can add value to your business. You might be looking at HR differently. You might be looking at your payroll solutions differently. So these are the types of things that are going on right now that we haven't had exposure to ever. And they're willing to meet via Zoom. It's a beautiful world. So if you've had comments or anything like this, please share them. I want to hear your feedback. I also talked to another individual that's working with another tech company. Again, I called him to work on a project, and you know, very, very senior person at that time. He just happened to be out picking up just the minimum amount of groceries with his wife, and wasn't working on anything. And now I have him fully engaged in a project, and he's so thankful to be what he feels is gainfully employed, even though he's running a company, but to be a part of this. So there's people out there, they are looking to talk to you. You just have to find them.
Yeah, excellent message. And you know, I thought it would be nice. I've mentioned a couple of very relevant examples throughout the presentation, but just this morning I grabbed two more. Right, Paul Curry, who owns a company locally, Quick Print, is obviously adjusting his business to be more relevant in this market. This is he printed for local companies to adapt to the social distancing, right? So I thought this was a wonderful example of being more relevant in today's market. I know we have John Eric on the line and Julia, his wife, Julia Howard, and what they've been doing is jumping on social media, and you know, they're going to be doing a session this coming Monday, which is actually a virtual workout, and so it's a great example. And I know, having been a client of John Eric for the last year, he's taken his business and is moved to completely virtual, whereby he's delivering workouts for his clients so that they can do it at home, right? So I thought this was another great example of building relevance in this market. And so also now is the time, and I'm kind of repeating myself here, but now is the time to reach out for these conversations. They're sitting at home looking for intelligent conversations. And I thought this was a relevant quote. We can improve our relationships with others by leaps and bounds if we just become encouragers instead of critics. And I think if we can embody that, you know, these conversations are not about selling. They're not about pushing what your offer is on people. We got to get rid of that mindset. That's what sales is. We can set up these conversations in such a way that we bring value, we be of service to our ideal clients, and we encourage them, right? And that's a far more palatable approach to sales in this environment. The result is a sale. However, it's done in a pull approach versus a push approach. And I think you'll agree that feels better for everybody. So I encourage you to embrace that mindset. Any thoughts, Carol?
Yeah, so we can field questions. So I encourage you, if you want to have a question, just open up your mic and ask us. Like, we know that it's a challenging time out there. We know some of you are in sales, and you know, the thing that I love about salespeople is how much rejection they can take, and just, you know, let's talk about that. You know, it is a challenging time. I hope what you take from mine and Chris's message is that it's a time to adapt and approach it from a more personal level, and really engage in this time, and that you will find your ideal client because they're out there waiting for you. But getting to them, I understand, might be a challenge. So we're open to, you can pick our brains on how we might think that can happen. It's different for all companies, of course, but you have our undivided attention.
Yeah.
So,
and go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Chris, with the last.
No, I mean, this is the last slide, to be honest with you. So, I mean, this is a great time to innovate your business model, move online, build out a virtual sales process. You know, I have a client of ours who was jumping on airplanes every second day to meet face-to-face with clients, and it worked. However, this particular client is now moving that completely virtual. And the thought process is that once you arrive at the right formula, it's going to benefit in the long run, and the sales process in theory could be always conducted virtually. So now's the time to try out some new things, right? You know, leverage these Zoom and FaceTime video conversations, webinars. Webinars are great. This is a webinar right here, right? I mean, in theory, this webinar is recorded, and we could leverage this live webinar to share with prospects, with ideal clients, prospects, as a means to attract new clients to us, right? So leverage webinar technology. And that kind of concludes the presentation. Obviously not the time, we're still here, and we'd love to field your questions and pick our brains in any way we can. You can, but I will end off by saying there's a couple of things. There's our contact information. Feel free to call, email. As well, my book was mentioned at the start, published it in 2016, It's Time to Sell. But if you want to go to my website, you can download a free copy of it. So feel free to avail of that.
I'll mention Chris's book. I think it's the only book that I've read several times. So in fact, I think I've read it 3 times, and I've heard multiple people say that I've reread that book. So do reach out and get a copy of that book, and reach out to either one of us anytime. You have the opportunity to work with both of us jointly.